Bruchim Aboim B'Shem Eden Shir. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Smith and Dini Adochas Kelim Yomtov, washing dishes on Yomtov. I have the great source sponsoring a shir called Eden Shir 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com.
One of the more challenging Hilchos Yomtov sugyas is the question of washing dishes. As we know, we go from the first day to the second day, and there's a thought because of the delay. Is there any eitzah to wash dishes in advance of the second day? Especially the Leil Seder this year, the second night, till you start, you have to wash the dishes. This year we have an interesting Pesach. We go from Shabbos into Sunday, and the last days is Friday into Shabbos, and Erev Tevshilin. Next Yomtov Shavuos is a 3-day Yomtov, Shabbos and 2-day Shavuos. Last year we had Erev Pesach, Shachal B'Shabbos, and has its own unique questions. And basically we'll try to talk about the halachos of washing dishes as far as one day to the next, Erev Tevshilin, the details of soap, scoring powder, rubber gloves, steel wool. But I think it's important before we apply it l'maisa to be magdam one very important yisoid. Make it much easier and clearer to try to apply it l'maisa. The issa of achana is a well-known issa. Actually, there's a Mishnah in Shabbos, Kuf Yud Gimel, that you're not allowed to make a bed or fold clothing on Shabbos for Matzoi Shabbos. You're preparing on Shabbos for Chayil. Another example is in Shabbos Kuf Yud Ches, you're not allowed to wash dishes what you don't need on Shabbos. Now obviously you're not using hot water on Shabbos, but even with cold water is an issa of achana to wash dishes on Shabbos for Matzoi Shabbos. Now let's pose the following question. Let's say a person has a long Achan Shel Pesach afternoon. Well, this year it's Shabbos. Let's say in a regular year when it's during the week. It would be a wonderful idea if we have a long afternoon, we'll wash the dishes and make the post-Pesach cleanup much easier. You'll wash the dishes Achan Shel Pesach, and you won't have to spend the whole night putting away the dishes. You know, you'll save so much time. So we think, oh, but that's wrong. That's achana. You're not going to use the dishes again. But that's right and that's wrong, because it's worse than achana. Because typically when you wash dishes on Yomtov, as we'll soon see, you use hot water. And we'll soon see why that's mutter on Yomtov. But if someone's going to wash dishes on Achan Shel Pesach, on a regular Yomtov when it's not Shabbos, and he'll use hot water, besides the issa of achana, he's making an issa of bishul shaloi l'tzarech Yomtov, which could be a malacha d'oraisa. In other words, and this is my point, whenever you have an issue of achana, you have to look a little closer. Maybe there are two issues. Besides the standard issur of achana, you're preparing today for tonight, but it could be a malacha. You'll say, what do you mean? On Yom Tov you're allowed to use hot water. So what's wrong if I use hot water on Achan Shel Pesach? So that I will tell you a big yisoid. I counted personally, 12 times in the Torah, it says regarding Yom Tov that you're not allowed to do malacha. Different l'shayin is malacha le'isas le'yosa, but 12 times in Shmois, b'mid ben devarim. But l'mais we do malacha on Yom Tov. The teretz is it's mutter on Yom Tov to do malacha for oichel nefesh l'boy b'yoyim, only for that day. If you do malacha on Yom Tov for matzah Yom Tov, there's no heter. So, on a regular Shabbos, a person washes dishes for Matzoi Shabbos, he doesn't use hot water because it's Shabbos. So, at the worst scenario, it's achana. But when it comes to Yom Tov, it's a little more tricky because he might use hot water, and that's a malacha shaloi l'tzarech, which is much more serious. So that's why every time we have a shayla, we have to realize that it's beyond achana, it could be a malacha. I'll give you another simple example. Let's say this year, it was also not a good mashal because this year Shabbos, but on a regular Pesach, Tuesday and Wednesday, for example. So he thinks, until I come home at night for the second Seder, and you have to make the Seder right away, but you have to start washing your dishes. Let me wash dishes the first day Yom Tov, and I'll use it at night for the second day. It's not for Chayil. But this is a very big yisoid that we're all familiar with. And that is, in Chutz La'aretz, we're zoichet to Yom Tov Sheni. And we treat Yom Tov Sheni like Yom Tov Rishon. We're not mezalzel Yom Tov Sheni. But we know very well in the Torah is only one day Yom Tov. In Eretz Yisrael, Ad Hayom, there's only one day Yom Tov. So the Shulchan Aruch says in Tov Kuf Gimel that although we treat Yomtov Sheni like regular Yomtov, that's l'chumra. But l'kula, you have to realize that it's not really Yomtov. So if someone on a first day Yomtov, let's say Tuesday, will wash dishes for Tuesday night, even though he's doing it for Yomtov Sheni, and Yomtov Sheni is a heilig day, but since midaraisa there is no Yomtov Sheni, we look at it, I'm almost afraid to say that, we look at it as if he's doing malacha on Yomtov for chayil. So we treat Yomtov Sheni regarding Yomtov Rishon like chayil. So preparing, not only preparing on Yomtov, post Yomtov needs, is an issa hachana and sometimes a malacha. Yomtov Rishon to Yomtov Sheni has the same problem. And that's the mechaber in Tov Kuf Gimel. The point is, the Musa Haskell I should say, is every day is precious. Yomtov Rishon is precious, Yomtov Sheni is precious, Shabbos, and each day prepares for that day and not beyond. You come home Tuesday night to Yomtov Sheni, then you can start cooking and doing all achanas. So basically what we have to really clarify, which we did, that there are two issues in every achana. There's achana, but on Yomtiv, it could also be malacha. A person cooks on the first day for the second day. It's not just achana, it's bishul shaloi l'tzarech Yomtiv, which conceivably could be a deraisa. And I keep on saying, maybe deraisa because as far as of mitoich and hoyel, but b'yisoid, there's an issue of achana and an issue of malacha. Now let's apply this lemaisa. Let's talk about a simple shayla. Let's say you want to wash dishes on Sunday, the second day Pesach, for the second day Pesach. You wake up in the morning, you want to wash dishes Sunday morning to use Sunday afternoon. No problem of achana. The question is it mutter to boil water, make them bishul deraisa to wash dishes? Oichel nefesh is mutter. But you're not drinking the water, you're using the water to wash dishes. Or maybe we'll say, washing dishes is part of oichel nefesh. Just like you're allowed to cook water to drink water, you're allowed to cook water to wash dishes. Or maybe you'll say, maybe it's not oichel nefesh, you're not drinking it, but it's minimally machshiri oichel nefesh. To make a long story short, the Mechaber in Kuf Tes Aleph gives one example. The Rav in Tov Tzadikei Dalet gives a very beautiful overview. But to make a long story short, oichel nefesh, we know what it means. You cook food to eat, that's oichel nefesh. Let's say you have a spit, in those days a spud, that they used to roast the meat, which is perfectly mutter on Yom Tov, but it's bent. You can't use it. So you want to fix it, which is of course the malacha of tikkun, on Yom Tov, because you're using it to roast meat. So roasting meat is fine. But fixing a spit, tikkun, you're not eating the spit. It's only machshir, it's a preparation to be able to cook. So that's called machshir yoichel nefesh. And basically the halacha is that if it was possible, efshemi b'yom to fix it, and you delayed it till Yom Tov, you're not allowed to fix it. You have to do it every Yom Tov. Let's say it broke on Yom Tov, it's the efshemi b'yom, then you could fix it, but the halacha, very strangely, is halacha ve'ein moirin kain. If you know the halacha, good for you. But if you ask the Rav, and the Rav sees you know the halacha, he can't paskin its mutter. And the Shulchan Aruch explains, because you might come to do machshirim that are efshemi b'yom. So Chazal made this ambiguous halacha. It's mutter ve'ein moirin kain. The question is if the Rav could give a shir about it, if he could write a sefer about it, so that will leave for a different sugya. But basically, machshir yoichel nefesh have two preconditions. It's only mutter if it's efshemi b'yom, and even that is ein moirin kain. So now we have a big question. Cooking water, and I'm stressing cooking on a fire, we'll soon talk about a sink, which is different. But let's say conventional cooking water to wash dishes. If you tell me it's oichel nefesh, so you could do a lechatchila, you could paskin that, you could tell anybody the halacha. But if it's a step removed from oichel nefesh, it's only machshiri oichel nefesh, then if you have dishes that you could have washed erev Yom Tov, you left them from Chol HaMoed, then you can't wash them on Yom Tov. You can't boil water. You could use cold water. It's not a chana, but you can't boil water. And more so, ein moirin kain. So let's think in svara. Is this boiling water to wash dishes, is it machshir eichel nefesh like a spit? The truth is, we see in other areas of halach, I know it's not a raya brew, but I think it's a good insight, that dishes are part of the eating process. A dogma, the Berheita V'Shin Chesif Cotton Yud says that although you're not to move stam kelim shaloi l'tzoyer klal on Shabbos, it's considered muktzah shaloi l'tzoyer klal, but food ends up the Berheita and dishes you're allowed to move shaloi l'tzoyer klal. So we equate food and dishes. In Shilam B'Dalet Zayin, if there's a fire in someone's house, he's allowed to say food and dishes. And we'll soon see in Hilchas Erev Tavshilin. Erev Tavshilin permits oichel nefesh and washing dishes. So it seems, and that's logical, that washing dishes is part of oichel nefesh. Oy bazoi, it's really mutlach atchila to cook water to wash dishes. And listen to the lashon of the Ramah and Tafkuf Yiral of Siv Beis. He's talking about cooking water to wash panav yadav v'raglav on Yomtov, which is mutter. And then he says, and also, k'shetzarach lem levashel, you're allowed to cook water for bishul, oy lahadiach. You're allowed to cook water lahadiach. And presumably, lahadiach means to wash dishes. The Levush and Sif Aleph and the Rav and Sif Aleph both say lahadiach kelim. Oh, so we have a wonderful amitzia. That washing dishes is considered oichel nefesh mamish, and is mutter even if it was efshemi b'ayjayim. I mean, of course, you shouldn't delay washing dishes, but it's mutter even efshemi b'ayjayim. Fregt Reb Shlomo Zalman and Shmir HaShabbos, a beautiful question. This is in Perik Yud Beis, in Sipkat Yud Dalet. Fregt Reb Shlomo Zalman, the Ramah himself in Tov Kuf Tes Sif Hey says it's asa to kasha kelim on Yomtov. And the Mishnah Berurah explains why. Even if you're going to use the keli on Yomtov, but in order to kasha, you have to boil water. And boiling water is only machshiri oichel nefesh. You're not drinking that water. So kashering per se is not a problem. It's only nereka masakin, and if you have boiling water, maybe it's mutter, Mishnah Berurah discusses. But the problem is to boil water to kashering is machshiri oichel nefesh. So then he says, if it's yafshin b'ayjayim, ein marin kain. But for Reb Shlomo Zalman, so cooking water to kasha is considered machshir oichel nefesh. So isn't the same true regarding cooking water to wash dishes? And either Ramah that says lahadiach, so he says maybe the Ramah is talking if it's yafshimi b'ayjayim, and even that is only mutter ve'ein marin kain. Or maybe he says, and that's a real big chiddush, the Ramah means madiach basa or peiris. Food. Oh, that's oichel nefesh. But says Reb Shlomo Zalman, it's possible that water, hot water to cook, to clean dishes, might only be machshiri oichel nefesh and is limited to ein moirin kain. But Shmir Shabbos points out, the Yehuda and the Tshuva, and we could have added the Rav and the Levush all say that when it says ladiach, it means washing dishes. So now we have a problem. Reb Shlomo Zalman is choishish that the cooking water is only machshirim. But as we said earlier, we see from other halachas that washing dishes is really part of oichel nefesh. And I saw in the Sefer Hilchas Mayadim, in Perik Zayin, it's Ha'or 8, a very beautiful hezbah. To eat, you need food. Now, it's not part of the program that the spit breaks and you have to fix it. And even if the spit is broken, you have to fix it and then start cooking the food. So fixing a keli is tikkun keli. That's machshir yoichel nefesh. But we all know that washing dishes is part of eating. If you have a suda, you have to wash dishes for the next suda. No one says that washing dishes is tikkun keli because it's not broken. That's part of the eating process. You use dishes, you clean, and you wash them. Baruch Hashem, you have whom to feed. But his point is that part of the eating process is washing dishes. But fixing a broken spit is an occasional concern. That's tikkun keli. That's only machshir yoichel nefesh. Now the emes is, I saw another svara, basically that you need hot water to wash dishes for your own hands. It's very difficult to use cold water. So maybe that's part of the heta of using it for your hands. But at the end of the day, it seems that Lamaisa, most poskim assumed, and Shlomo Zalman also points out that the stimas ha-poskim is, ladiach means ladiach kelim. That it's not just a step before Eichel Nefesh. Washing dishes is part of Eichel Nefesh. So it's halacha u'mayrin kain, even if it's efsha mi'boyjoy. Now, of course, that safe halach me'adam, since Shlomo Zalman says, don't be makel if it's efsha mi'boyjoy, don't leave it from Erev Yomtiv. But in theory, we could say that washing dishes is considered Eichel Nefesh. You might ask, wait a second, I understand washing dishes is Eichel Nefesh, but cooking water is a step before washing dishes. Why is it at Machshiri Eichel Nefesh? So that's not shver. If you look at the Rosh and Beya, Perik Beis, Siman Yotes, and the Rav says is also that I mentioned earlier, that whatever's needed for Eichel Nefesh is considered Eichel Nefesh. And cooking water is needed for dishes. So we're pretty comfortable to say that cooking water to wash dishes is considered Eichel Nefesh and is mutter v'umayrin kain. But, and here's the big but, we have to realize that Yomtiv is not hefka. And even for washing dishes, it's not a hefka belt. I'm going to tell you halacha that when this was the geya for last year, and it's Mavel Harayan to see how Chazal carefully protected the Heilige Yomtiv. Last year we were Zayich der Pesach Shechal b'Shabbos. So we had a different approach. We had everything Pesach dik, except for of course the Challah. But the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah and Taf Mem Dalet Gimel discusses if someone, believe it or not, cooked a chametz dika cholent for a Pesach Shechal b'Shabbos in the morning. Okay, why not? So he quotes Marie Weil that, very nice, you finished in time, and what are you doing with the dirty cholent pot? Wash it? You're not going to wash it on Shabbos. You're not going to use it till next week, till after Pesach. You can't wash dishes for no reason. So he quotes Marie Weil that the best thing is if you lick it all up, finger licking good, they say, lick it all up, don't leave any chametz. If there's no other choice, then he says that maybe it would be better to hide the akum, but if there's no other choice, it's considered tzarech mitzvah, you're allowed to wash the dishes. But it's interesting, the Magen Avram, Mr. Brewer quote this, that better lick it with your finger or get a guy, but if there's no choice, wash it yourself. It's a few minutes before the Zman, and he's washing this to get rid of chametz, but that's not a tzarech of Shabbos. You're not using the dishes. So the Mishnah Berurah says, try to be kinuach and goy, because it has to be a tzarech for the boy b'yoyim. Washing dishes you're not using. I'll tell you more so. And that's more amazing. There are more in Tov Nun Tes Dalid discusses those that bake matzahs on Yomtiv. And that's the last time they're baking matzahs this Yomtiv. So it's very nice, is it? That's mamish Erev Pesach matzah kipshuta on Pesach. What do you do with the kelim? So the Ramah says, well, either the guy could wash the dishes, but if there's no guy available, so maybe put it in cold water, or else put the kelim into the oven and bake it as matzah. So you'll prevent it from becoming chametz. But for Yid to wash the dishes is not even a havamin. It's like Mishnah Berurah. Why? You're washing on Yomtiv. For what? You're not using it again on Yomtiv. So here it's already Yomtiv, and you have dough that if you leave it a few more minutes, it's going to become chametz. And the eighth is get a guy, or put it into the oven, or put cold water that will stop the chimutz process. But a Yid to wash dishes on Yomtiv shaloi l'tzorich man dechar shmei. Imagine how Chazal were restrictive regarding washing dishes that you don't need. Now I'm sure you're thinking the obvious question: Ma nishtana taf mem dalid that a Yid could do it, and taf mem tes only a guy could do it. So the Rav Shulchan Aruch in Sif Chav Beis and taf mem tes says the chiluk is pashut because Erev Pesach Chal b'Shabbos you have chametz mamish, and the clock is ticking. Soon it's going to be zman. So you have chametz already. Then, if there's no choice, you could wash it yourself. Taf nun tes, it's not yet chametz, so put it in the oven, put cold water, get a guy. Azoy vayit, washing dishes already that might be chametz is not mutter. It's hadacha shalei l'tzorich. So that's why we'll say, even though we're going to be makel, we're washing dishes, it has to be a valid tzorech hayoim. We also see, and we'll use this soon, that if there's really no choice, Aidiakum is better. Because it would be a shvus to shvus, b'makoim, mitzvah makom tzorech. Now this all we spoke about cooking water to wash dishes. The more typical question is using tap water. Put it on the sink, let the hot water run, and using hot water to wash dishes. So this is a beautiful ha'ara where it's not as simple as we would like it to be. What's taka wrong with using hot water on Shabbos? Let's say I want to wash dishes. Why can't I use hot water? So the answer is the using hot water per se is not a problem. The problem is, if you know the basics of the way it works, the hot water comes out, that's fully cooked. But for the hot water to come out, the cold water in your basement has to push out the hot water. You use a gallon of water upstairs, a gallon of cold water goes into the hot water tank, which is a huge 50-gallon ambatya kli rishon al gabi ha'esh. So a gallon of cold water goes into a kli rishon and gets cooked right away. It's not a grama, it's a ma'aser b'yadayim, it's a bitka demaya, a koyach rishon, bishul, pashas bishul deraisa on Shabbos. So on Shabbos, of course, we don't use hot water. The question is, are we allowed to use hot water on Yomtov? So you'll say, well, Yomtov is fundamentally different. You're allowed to cook water on Yomtov. So even if it's true, which it is, that the cold water goes into the tank and gets cooked instantly, there's no problem. The bishul on Yomtov is mutter. But if you think about it, it's a very similar problem. Because the gallon you use is fine. The gallon that goes in is getting cooked. So far, so good. But you're not using the water again. So that gallon is a bishul shaloi l'tzorech. So that's why if you cook water on a pot and you use what you cook, you're fine. But here, inevitably, this water is not going to be used. So you're cooking on Yomtov, shaloi l'tzorech Yomtov. You're back to kol malacha lo yayasa. I'll say, okay, but I'll use it again, fine. But then the next problem is a problem. You could go back until you hit the wall. There's always going to be a last time. And lamaisa, there are those that are machmir and don't use hot water from the sink for this reason. But the minig ha'olam is to be makel, and we could very well understand it. Let's say I want to wash dishes 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And right now, it's definitely a tzorech yomtiv. It's not a chon. I'm washing, let's say 12 o'clock. For the Suda at 1 o'clock. So it's no shail of achana and no shail of bishul, because I'm using the dishes. You'll say, don't use it because someone might never use it after the water again. It's not true. In my house, people put on the sink to wash their hands. I am using the water at 12 o'clock. There's a good chance someone will use it. It comes out that no one used it. So that we have a taz. Mr. Burrow quotes from Tov Kuf Yud Ches Sif Kot and Yud. Let's say a person's going to shul and it looks like it looks like it's going to rain. So he wants to bring his hat cover. But maybe it's not going to rain. But you're allowed to carry misafik. Oh, he went to shul, no rain. He's walking home, might rain, he walks home. When he's on the block from his house, does he have to daven for rain? Otherwise he was oivel and mafreya? So Dr. Taz, no. If there's legitimate need, safik, you might need, it's also good. So what do we see? Tzorech is lav dafka vadai, and if l'mafreya you won't oiv anything. If you have a legitimate need, possibly that somebody's going to use it, it's fine. So here, the water that's being cooked might be used. You don't have to worry beyond that. Maybe you'll say, but at the very end of Yomtiv, there's no chance anybody will use it, and you're right. But using the hot water, Yomtiv night, Yomtiv day, where there's a reasonable chance it will be used again, is not a shayla. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman and Shmir Shabbos, Perek Beis, Orchav Beis, has a novel svara to be made from a different angle. And he says, you're right. Let's say you're using water and no one will use it after you. So the gallon of water goes in and will not be used on Yom Tov. That's still mutter. Because the only way to get the gallon of water out, the hot water that you could use, is if the gallon of water replaces it. That's enough of a tzorech that's considered bishul tzorech. You're not using the water, but you can't operate other way. You ever wonder, why can we use water on Shabbos? I'll go down to the basement, I'll close the cold water feed, so the cold water won't go into the tank. So it's a great idea. You won't be over bishul, but you won't have hot water. Because without the cold water, there's no hot water upstairs. So Rabbi Zalman says this svara is enough to be makel, and he says the obvious, according to this svara, even if you won't use it again on Yomtiv, it's mutter because this is the derech of using hot water. I know others question this, but at least we have two good svaras, and that's the minig ha'olam to use hot water. Either someone might use it, or that's the way it's done. Now, Reb Shlomo Zalman's chilek, you could say, if it's mamash delay a few minutes before the end of the zman, so then there's a makom lahachmir, else the fact that there's no longer a suffix. I must mention that today many homes have what's called a tankless boiler, or a flow sensor, that's very problematic on Yom Tov, is besides Shabbos, obviously. And let me briefly explain it for those that have it. I hope they know this as it is. But today, the regular old-fashioned boiler, they say is too expensive. The water it has to be constantly cooking, and the fire is going at all times. So what they have, a new system that basically has very thin pipes that are just empty. When you put on the hot water, so the water starts to flow. So the flow sensor senses that there's water going through. That activates a heating element, different types, but it puts on a heating element, and that cooks the water in this tankless boiler, which is basically a box that has these thin wires in it, with an intense heat on the spot. So the water, with the intense heat, cooks the water on the spot, and as soon as you close the water, the whole thing stops. So the problem, of course, is that when you take out hot water, you're putting on the heating element, kipsuta. It's like putting on an urn to cook water to wash your dishes. The regular hot water tanks are going all the time. So it's just adding cold water to a hot water tank. That's fine. The tankless boiler basically is a psikration. When you put it on, it activates the heating element. So that's like putting on an urn to cook the water. So those that have it should look into it and make sure that they know the mitzias, and of course act accordingly. The next stage of this sugya is the question: is there any eitzah from Yom Tov Rishon to Yom Tov Sheni? Again, especially on Pesach, we go from Ma'ariv, and then we have to start washing dishes. It makes a delay. Is there any way to sort of expedite the process, because you're not allowed to wash on the first day for the second day? So let me be clear. This is part of Shmiras Yom Tov. Every Yom Tov has a Yom Tov Rishon, Yom Tov Sheni. That's why the Mishnah Berurah says the minig is to daven Ma'ariv a little later, Yom Tov Sheni, to give time to prepare. And lahavdil, I guess, when you go on the highway, it says a big sign, expect delays. So on Yom Tov, you come home, expect delays. It's inevitable. The Nashim can't do everything in a moment, so it takes a little longer. Of course, the best eitzah, when you come home and you want to start to say right away, roll up your sleeves, wash dishes, help out. You'll say, maybe there's a chashash layilbash, it's a ma'aseh nashim. So let me relieve you. The Gemara Megillah Chav Gimel, taka noteworthy Gemara. The Gemara says, B'yomtiv ma'achrin lavai. Rashi says, you start davening late, so because you have to have time to prepare for the Suda. Frag the Yavitz on that Gemara, what, men wash the dishes? Because one Torah says the women wash dishes and men have to watch the children. V'oid, sometimes women need help of the men. So obviously, based on the Gemara, you're allowed to help at home. There's no chashash of layilbash. But what's interesting, and this might be an eitzah to whom it may concern, let me be careful. We are makbid, or Moshe writes that in a tshuva chedal samach beis, that to do malacha matzoi Shabbos, we wait for 72 minutes. Rabbeinu Tamshit. The question is, on a regular matzoi Shabbos, or on Yom Tov Rishon to Yom Tov Sheni, when is it mutter to do achana, which does not involve any malacha? L'mashal, you'll wash dishes with cold water. There's no malacha. It's just hachana. Or you'll set the table. No malacha. Hachana. Hachana is asa enough, but there's no malacha. When does the issa, when you could be makel with the issa of hachana, when it involves no malacha? Cooking is hachana and malacha. But setting the table and washing dishes in cold water is only hachana without malacha. So many people who are Rabbeinu Tam We'll say, what's the shayla? I'm not mechal Shabbos, not for the rice, not for Rabbanans. Fine. But the Moshe in that tshuva says regarding the mashal eating after a tainis, that is what to be saimech on after 15 minutes. For Nissa the Rabbanan, you could be saimech on that zman. He even says a zman of 41 minutes, really malkum tzayrich. But I think we understand that those that are makel on a tainis and will eat, they'll daven ma'ariv, let's say at 35, and eat a tainis Rabbanan except for Tisha B'Av Yom Kippur. After 50, so for Nissa the Rabbanan, you rely on the early zman. So how could achana be worse? I saw a number of the Heintige Poskim say that if a person is not through and through a Beinu Tam, and if he's Suri Debon, he's Saimach on the earliest man, so Lamani Gara Hachana. The emes is the Mishtabur in the end of Reish Sadik Tes, B'Shem de El Yerabba, and B'Shem Zalman and Shulchan Shloim Afanot, says that some hold that Ben Hashmoshais, even before you talk about 50 minutes after Shkia, Ben Hashmoshais, there might be a het to do Hachana. Now, we don't go with that kula. But if you're talking about a zman that you rely on for the Rabbanans, so lamani gara hachana. So again, I'm not saying you should be makel or not, but to whom may concern if someone feels that there's extra few minutes will make all of the difference, and anyhow for the Rabbanans, he's saimech on the 50 or the 60 minutes man, there's what to be saimech if it's hachana without malacha. Now, another point I wanted to mention, Pashnageh, this year, Pesach and Shavuos, for us men in shul, we go from Yomtov of Pesach Rishon to second day, which is Shabbos into Matzoi Shabbos. Erev Shabbos, Shavuos goes into Shavuos, Matzoi Shabbos, and Sunday night. So we know that we say V'atoydiyeni, when Shemay Nesra, and then basically Shabbos is over. The Noshim wait for the Zman, whatever the Zman is, and they start doing preparations on Matzoi Shabbos Pesach, Matzoi Shabbos Shavuos, whenever their Zman is. But the Mishnah reminds us, to remind our B'nai Bayis, Reish Sadik Tes Yivkat Lamed Vav, that no one could do Malacha on Matzoi Shabbos without Baruch HaMavdil. Don't forget, you're going from Shabbos to Matzoi Shabbos. So even though the Zman has come, but if you didn't make some type of Havdalah, you can't do Malacha. But I would add, make sure you say it correctly, not Baruch HaMavdil Men Kodesh L'Choyel, this is HaMavdil Men Kodesh L'Kodesh. So Zalman Paskins in the Shmir Shabbos, Amach Beis, Haranun and the Stiplen in the Archas Rabbeinu, Chelik Aleph, Kuf Lamed Beis, both say, if a person on Yom Tiv said the whole Havdalah, and he concluded HaMavdil Ben Kodesh L'Choyel, he wasn't Yaitza, because he didn't say the proper Havdalah. The bigger Chiddush is HaMavdil Ben Kodesh L'Kodesh. So really have to be careful to, first of all, for those that do Malacha before Havdalah, whether it's Tefillah or Alakois, say Baruch HaMavdil, and make sure you say it properly, HaMavdil Ben Kodesh L'Kodesh. Another important halacha to mention is an interesting question, I think it's an intriguing question, is there any heta to do malacha of achana without Baruch HaMavdil? Some want to say it's not a ma'aseh malacha, so you don't need Baruch HaMavdil. Maybe the Mishnah is talking about malacha mamish, cooking, but just doing hachana, and there are some that say that, because hachana is a moderate issa. But the Elef Lamog and Tafkuf Tzadik Tes, and the Shmir Shabbos, Samach Beis and Aleph, and almost all places can say that we treat this as one of the malachas, albeit the Rabbanan, and even before a hachana, which is without malacha, you still should say Baruch HaMavdil Ben Kodesh LeKodesh. Another intriguing question. The women, let's say on a typical Yomtov, see this year's Pesach, not a good most, let's use Shavuos. Shavuos is Sunday and Monday. So they wait for their Zman, and then they start cooking and doing malachas mamish. Going from Shavuos Rishon to Shavuos Sheni, from Sunday to Sunday night, which is the second day Yom Tov Shavuos. Do they say Baruch HaMavdil before doing Malacha on Sunday night, which is Yom Tov Sheni? Because until the Zman, it would also do Malacha for Yom Tov Sheni. So you're probably wondering, well, we don't make Havdalah Yom Tov Rishon to Sheni, why should they? And that's true, we don't. But the plea is that Yirab and Reish Sadik Tes Chav Beis Kamat Mefurish says that from Yom Tov Rishon to Yom Tov Sheni, either you say Yudav Ma'ariv, or you say Baruch Atah Hashem HaMavdil. So the Sharetzian says the Lashon Megumgum. What does that mean? There's no Havdalah between first day and second day. So he says it's probably a printing error. He writes very bekitza, but it probably means Lo'oma Kiddush. Because typically we change days when we either daven Ma'ariv, Baruch, or Kiddush. But let me be clear, there is no Baruch HaMavdil between first day Yom Tov and second. You'll ask, but it's an Issa Malacha from one day to the second day? That's true. It's an Issa Malacha for the second day, but on the first day you could do Malacha for the first day. So it's not essentially an Issa Malacha, and therefore Baruch HaMavdil is definitely not necessary. Now, Lamaisa, the issue that we're going to have this, that we're going to have Taka Shavuos, and we had last year Erev Pesach Chal B'Shabbos, is basically the fact is that people have cholent, and if there are any eitzah, we'll do with a cholent pot. You can have a cholent pot lying in the kitchen 2.5 days, from Shabbos until 2 days Shavuos. So, Lamaisa, the eitzah is Chacham Eina B'Roishai, and when you empty out the cholent, don't just put it down, and then you get to later, you worry about it later. Take it when you have it. Either the other, you could take it and put it someplace that'll be out of sight for the next 2.5 days. Put it on a porch, whatever it is, and people still have fire escapes. But don't put it down and then you have problems what to do with it. They do sell disposable cholent pots, believe it or not, a type of a tin, like aluminum pan that's crafted, so that would be an eitz, you could throw it out. But basically, in these things, it's basically Chacham Eina B'Roishai. Going from one day Yom Tov to the next, the issue this year will be Taka Motzei Shabbos and Shavuos one day to the next, is basically you can't start washing dishes with hot water until there's man. And that causes a delay. So I've heard the question more than once, is it maybe more appropriate to use disposable dishes so you save time of washing dishes? Some people are very vehemently opposed to that. Derech Cheres and you have disposable dishes. No, I can understand. So what's the eitzah? So delay the Seder. So that's your choice. Some people have an eitzah, they start the Seder right away, and the women are in the kitchen the whole Seder washing dishes. That's derech cheres for you, but not for her. So that's a little not, oiske cheshbent. So if the women have to miss the Seder because they're washing dishes, maybe it's better to use disposable, so there'll be derech cheres for both. Is there an eitzah on Yom Tov Rishon even, to have a goy wash all the dishes on Yom Tov Rishon for Yom Tov Sheni? Now, at first glance, this is certainly not convincing, because there's an issa of Amir La'akum on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Why isn't there an issa regarding Achana? So there is a svara to say that why is Tak Achana also? It's not a malacha. Let's say the guy will wash with cold water. There's no malacha. The only issa is Achana. A zilzal in Yom Tov, you're abusing the Yom Tov, you're preparing one day to the next. But a guy doesn't have Yom Tov. Maybe there's nothing wrong with having a guy do Achana Yom Tov Rishon to Yom Tov Sheni. There is a mashmois, the Pri Megadim in two places, and the John Rav and Taf Mem Dalet says, that's the psak of the Pri Megadim, that there's no issa of Amir La'akim regarding Hachana. Now, he was not saying when a guy has to do Malacha Deraisa of cooking the water. But Hachana, the Akim is mutter. But the overwhelming majority of Poskim strongly rejected that, and that's basically because at the end of the day, it's an issa d'Rabbanan. And if you want to see, there's a very nice discussion. The Machzor Eliyahu has a tshuva, and he points out a number of places that we find as a pashata assumption that there is an issa mir la'akum even regarding achana. And we had two examples earlier. If you recall, we spoke about Erev Pesach Chal B'Shabbos, or washing the velgeholz, the utensils used for baking matzahs, and we said since it's makkah mitzvah, you can have a guy wash it. That means otherwise, ordinarily, there's an issa mir la'akim even regarding achana. So again, the poskim, actually there are earlier poskim as well that assume that there is an issa of amir la'akim even regarding amir hachana that does not involve malacha. But let's be understanding. We also saw from Taf Mem Daled and Taf Nun Tes that b'makom mitzvah, b'makom tzairach, there is a heta of amir la'akim. And that's why in hotels, that have a very big oilam, or even a yeshiva, I'll give you a mashal, Shavuos this year, Shabbos, going into Motzei Shabbos and Sunday night. If they're going to start the hachanos, first by the man of 72, whatever they're makbid on, so until they have the Suda, there'll be a very long delay. And the whole night of Shavuos learning it anyhow was so minimal, you're going to have to delay Suda for an hour. So if a Paisik will realize that this is considered a point of makam tzarech, makam mitzvah, tzarech derabim, and the guy will use cold water. So it's only amir la'akum and an issa b'achana. And the worst scenario, that's a shvus to shvus, b'makam mitzvah, makam tzarech. And that's what many big hotels or hospitals that are run al pi Torah, but you can't wait till the last minute. So if it's an issa d'rabbanan of washing dishes with cold water, at most d'rabbanan it's a shvus to shvus, b'makam mitzvah, makam tzarech gadol. The problem is if the guy washes dishes with hot water, but you told him to wash with cold water, so that could be a legitimate daita denafshe. You told him to wash dishes, and that's his choice. So basically, amir la'akum does apply to the issa v'achana, but b'makam tzarech gadol, b'makam mitzvah, it's shvus just b'makam mitzvah. We should add that there are some times that it's muta al yidei Yisrael to wash dishes one day to the next. And this is in a rare case, but it's kedai to mention. Let's say you have a very hot Shavuos, or Sukkot, sometimes it's a very hot season, and to leave the dishes, it starts to have a bad odor, it starts to attract roaches and bugs, and you're not washing them to save time. You're washing them today to avoid an issue. You're going to know for other times that you live in a very problematic area, and there's roaches and there's bugs and the smell. So Rabbi Zalman and Shulchan Shloim Meshinchav Gimel, Sif Cotton Gimel, he says, Musupakni, if a person washes because he can't be soivel, the lack of cleanliness, or because of a chashash of ants, the nira, the chashiv tzarech Shabbos. He's talking about on Shabbos, but even on Shabbos you can wash the dishes. Now, of course, you have to be intellectually honest to know when is it really unbearable, like he says, he can't be soivel. When is it just a convenience? I mean, I think we all would appreciate a very clean kitchen on the whole Yomtov, but that's part of the Shmiras Yomtov, that's part of covered Yomtov to leave the dishes until at night. Now someone said, isn't it covered Yomtov to wash all the dishes and have a clean kitchen? I said, yeah. But more covered Yomtov is to keep Yomtov. Like the Chazon Ish once asked about someone, he got his hat dirty and he felt and he wanted to know if he has any hat. So Chazon Ish chapped and he said, oh, what a beautiful Shabbos hat. That's Shmiras Shabbos hat. Beautiful. Your advertising Shabbos is precious. So a Yiddish kitchen on Yom Tov, especially if you have a family, looks like it's seen better days. That's the beauty of Yom Tov. You wash at night, but not by day. But if someone really can't be soivel it, so the tzarech is for now. That would be a legitimate heta of hachana. But I would add, even if it's takamutta to wash dishes because they can't be soivel it, but to use hot water is a problem. Because this is already bishul daraisa. And if it's not shavel l'chol nefesh, the need is not shavel l'chol nefesh, then we're back to the Yom Tov restrictions that even bishul is only mutta shavel l'chol nefesh, like we see regarding showering. That's not mutta because it's not shavel l'chol nefesh. Now someone said his wife is extremely sensitive, she can't be soivel any dishes in the sink, and even during the week. No, so that's the same klal. If indeed it's distressful, so then you could wash with cold waters to alleviate that distress. But again, hot water is already a question of bishul, which is not a shavel l'chol nefesh. The Magen Avram does write, and I am aware in Shin Bei Sif Katan Vav, that even though making beds, Midin HaGemara, is only mutter if you're going to use the beds again, but let's say in the afternoon you're not going to use the beds again. But he says, if the mita is oimed b'chedesh adarsham, and it's a bezoyin udvar maguna, that it should stay like that, you're allowed to make the beds even on Shabbos afternoon. So someone thought, from here you see, let's see, covered Shabbos is mutter. It's not true. Read again. He's talking about not in those days, not like today they had a mansion. They had one room. That was the bedroom, dining room, study, living room, all in one. So if you have the bed in the same room, b'mita shadarsham, it's a bezoyin and dvar maguna. That's takamutta. But to have dirty dishes in the sink Shabbos, Yom Tov afternoon until Yom Tov night, that's Minig Yisrael. That's part of the beauty of Shmiras Yom Tov. So basically, unless it's physically distressing or painful, that's the Minig, and we leave it and we wash it when it's necessary. Another interesting possible heta to whom it may concern is the following, which we only get every Shabbos. It's a wonderful yediyah to share with you. Let's say you have a young couple or an older couple, but Bekitza, it's just the two of them. And they use dishes Friday night, and there's a service or two in the sink. And the woman wants to wash the dishes and use the same dishes by day. I mean, they won't wash the soup bowls, but everything else we'll use anyhow. is that mutter to wash on Friday night to use the dishes Shabbos day? You're wondering, what's the shaila? That's the Gemara says, if you need it for the day, it's mutter. But here's the catch. They have a service for 12. And there are 10 sets of dishes that are perfectly usable right now. So here the question is the heta l'tzorech hayoim? And if this is tzorech hayoim, or is the heta that you need it? And this you don't need because you have 10 other dishes. So to make a long story short, from the mashmayis of the Gemara in Shabbos Kuf Yud Ches, the Gemara basically seems to say if you're going to use it by day, it's mutter. The Mechaber says it even clear in Shinchav Gimel Vav, Madichen ke'em etzarech hayoim, kegoin shenishalei adayin suda lechol. You're allowed to wash if there's still a suda. So we could reasonably assume that if you wash Friday night to use it by the day meal, who cares if you have more dishes in the cabinet? It's being used on Shabbos or on Yomtov. And the emissaries, the Poskim seem to say it's mutter mikudin. But here you see something unique. The Taisus Shabbos, the Shinchav Gimel Ches, the Aruch HaShulchan and Siv Zayin, Shevet Alevi, Chelik Vav Membei strongly endorses this, that the lashon of the Taisus Shabbos is that if you have other dishes, Toiv Shalal Adichem, don't wash these dishes, you have other dishes. The Aruch HaShulchan says it's einay nachon to rely on this heta. So the point is, the letter of the law, it's mutter, because you're using them. But if you could avoid the tircha, why spend Shabbos time washing dishes? Put it in the sink and use other dishes. So we could say it's mutter mikudin, but it's nachon not to be saimich on. But here, to whom it may concern, I would add 2 factors. If a person's b'nei bayis are very sensitive, I can't be saved dirty dishes. So after a 2 or 3 day Yomtov, you're going to have a stack of dishes. So the eitzah would be use dishes that you need Yomtov night or Friday night that you'll have to wash for the next day. Even though you have other dishes, wash the dishes right away for the next day, even if you have other dishes. Now the problem. Here we have 2 svaras. First of all, it could be it's a tzar for the bnei abayis, so you're allowed to wash no matter what. And also you have this heta, and in that case we'll say it's nachon. But the problem is when after this day suda to wash for the night, you don't have this new heta of tzarech hayoim. So either you might say I'll use some of the dishes, which might be a heta, or Taki will say we'll have to make it a few hours. But the mile of this approach is you won't have 3 days worth of dishes sitting in the sink. You only have at most 1 amount of dishes from 1 suda. So that trims very much the big accumulation. Now, when a person does wash the dishes, so as we said, hot water is mutter, but it's not hefker the welt. The isurim of schita apply on Yomtov like Shabbos. So to use a sponge or a steel wool that's in a certain sense somewhat absorbent, it's not exactly like a sponge, but it does have water trapped between the fibers. So schita on Shabbos is asa, and on Yom Tov also it's asa. Abstein Bezalman in Shmir Shabbos, Yud Beis Lamered or Latzia and Lamadal Beis is a chiddush that even using steel wool on a pot without water is the issa of mamachek, because presumably the abrasive nature of the steel wool smooths out the pot. Now, I don't know, personally, but it seems that I heard this from other people also, that the Metzias is that it doesn't really, today's pots are better quality, they don't get smoothed out, they don't need any smoothing. Rabbi Yashiv in the Shalom Yehuda says if you use steel wool softly, gently, it's zichanat mamachek. But the emes is people ask this question, to use steel wool with water is schita, it's schita the rabbanan. But let's say I just use it I need the strength of it to get off the stain of the pot, otherwise it's not going to come off. So if the pots are not that quality that it's mamachek, then there shouldn't be an issue mamachek. But Yaman Zilba in the Shalma Yehuda is also makel steel wool, today's pots. So you have to know basically what type of pot it really is. Liquid soap, as we know, really even on Shabbos is mutter. It's only when it has a dense consistency that it's a problem of mamachek. Grab the mamachek with a bar of soap. I should mention it's also even on Yom Tiv, the Sharatzian, the Mishtabur in Tafnun Tesif Kat Memhei says mamachik is also on Yom Tov like Shabbos, but liquid soap that's mutter on Shabbos is mutter on Yom Tov also. Rav Moshe has a chiddush in Chelik Aleph Kuf Yud Gimel that if it makes some type of suds, then there is some consistency to it. So many people will dilute their liquid soap before Shabbos, so it's even less fluidy, is more fluidy, I'm sorry. So if you're makbid on Shabbos, Yomtov is no different, but mi'ikad din, soap that really pours as opposed to a glob, is mutter on Shabbos and mutter on Yomtov. People ask about using a rubber or plastic glove to wash dishes. So this is part of a big sugya, but you're not allowed to, of course, even apply water to a material, an absorbent material, wool, cotton, linen, because that's the issa of kibus. As opposed to that, as Machaba says in Shin Bey's test, leather is very, very not absorbent. So you're allowed to put water onto shoes. If you get, let's say, dirt on it, mud, you're allowed to wash off shoes. But to rub very vigorously, leather is somewhat porous, and there's an issa d'Rabbanan of rubbing very vigorously leather shoes or leather items bichlal. Because somehow that does make a certain type of kibus. So the poskim discuss when they started manufacturing rubber or plastic, what is the nature, the halachic status of rubber. So most poskim assume that rubber is non-porous. It's like a wood. You're allowed to rub a wooden counter. Rav Moshe, with his tremendous Yer Shamayim and Yardei Beis Ayin Hey, says although logically plastic and rubber should be like leather, but I don't have a raya, so let's treat it like leather. That you're allowed to add water and you're allowed to wipe it off, but to rub vigorously should be avoided. So to use a plastic glove, typically they don't use it to rub something vigorously. It's just to protect one's hands. So that's like regular plastic or rubber, like leather. You're allowed to use it in water. If someone's using his rubber gloves to wash the dishes and scrub it and rub it, even then I don't see it's not really kibus. He's making it dirty, not clean. But I did see the Shmir Shabbos, Yud Beis, Yud Daled, and Minchas Yitzchak, Chav Gimel, and other poskim say that basically rubber gloves, b'derech klal, are mutter to use on Shabbos or Yom Tov unless there's a problem of kibus, which is usually not the case. Reb Shlomo Zalman in Shmir Shabbos, Yud Beis, Yud Tes says a novel chiddush that sometimes you have pots or dishes that you're washing, and after sitting a few hours from day till night, there's a congealed gravy on it. So pouring hot water onto a congealed gravy is like you're changing the status from a solid to a liquid. On Shabbos, we don't change from a solid to a liquid. That's the issa of ein meraskines hasheleg, how to do something that changes from a solid to a liquid. Now this congealed gravy is like a semi-solid. So he says, that's true. There's an issa of moilin on Yom Tov when there's a discernible creation. If you light a fire, you moilin eish. But when you pour hot water onto the congealed gravy, it disintegrates and joins with the water. There's nothing that we could say, this is a new creation. And therefore, the fact that the congealed gravy dissolves is not the issa of moilid. And he brings a beautiful raya, because no one ever said you can't cook with schmaltz. That's the Pesach. People used to use schmaltz, margarine, but no one says it's moilid. You're putting schmaltz onto the fire, onto the pot on fire, so it's causing it to dissolve. So his svara is that it's only when there's something that you could point to as a creation, like a creation of an eish. But he says to the fact that you dissolve this congealed gravy is not a concern of moilid. Another point I wanted to mention is sometimes the dishwasher might save the day. Of course, maybe Pesach, people don't have dishwashers, but Sukkot and Shavuos, if you have dishes and you find it distressing, the eight is to put it in the dishwasher. It's out of sight. It contains the possible bad odor. It will prevent bugs. Now, Moshe does say in the end of Chelik Dal, Siman Dal, Siman Ayin Dal, he does say that there's no issa of achana to put it into the dishwasher, because you're not doing it to save time in Matzah Yom Tov. You're doing it to get it out of sight. So you're doing it for now. But he does caution, don't be misaded the dishes, because then it's boira. Because don't forget, like we said earlier, besides the general issa of hachana, there's the more serious issa of malacha. So a person can say hachana is mutter to put in dishwasher, but not boira. So sorting dishes might be an issa of boira. We had a shaila about someone had a very expensive kais shel yo, and if he leaves it for 2 days, or 1 day, let's say even 1 day, the acid in the wine might cause some damage to the kais. So this is lamaisa mutter for 2 reasons. First of all, the Machaba says in Shin Chav Gimel Vav that you're allowed to wash kais kol hayom because you might use it. But I don't think it's very reasonable that a person can use the kais shalio to drink unless he's very thirsty, has a big kais. But more understandably, there's a famous chiddush of the Marshag in Aleph Samach Aleph, where the Marshag says that the chana is only when you're doing it to save time. Instead of doing it tonight, you're doing it now. Let's say you're doing something because it has to be done now, and he gives a beautiful example. Let's say a person has his weekday hat left out in the bungalow colony. He will never use that weekday hat on Shabbos, and it's about to rain. So the halacha is there's no issa of muktzah on a hat, right? You're allowed to bring it in to save it from the rain. Freg de Marshag, okay, it's not an issa of muktzah. Why is there an issa of achana? You're only going to use it first tonight. You're not going to use it on Shabbos. Why is it mutta michambal atzel in any scenario? Why is it achana? So Zok de Marshag, a beautiful yisoid. Achana is when you're doing something that should be done on Matzoi Shabbos, you're doing it now to save time. This hat, if you don't do it now, emasai. The time to do it is now. Later is too late. So many poskim say if you're going to leave something untreated, it's going to get ruined, then the zman is now. So the eighth is just put water in. You don't have to wash it entirely. Just neutralize the acid, and then that's not a hachana. A fascinating question is many have a minig that they do not leave any dishes unwashed because of a concern of gebruchts. There might be crumbs of matzah, which might touch water, and people wash dishes immediately whether they need it or not. So many tshuvos are written to justify this minig. Don't forget, we learned Taf Mem Dalet and Taf Nun Tes regarding chashash of chametz mamish, that it's not pashut. So how could you wash al gebrot? And those that don't have the minig, we understand why. Because this is a hadacha shalei l'tzayrach. But minig Yisrael Torah, those that have the minig, we could understand it as well. First of all, you don't have to wash the dishes thoroughly. Just rinse off any residue and get rid of the concern. And some say that because there's no other choice, it might be mutter, but do I deyakum? But those that do it al Yisrael, it would be like Mr. Brewer says, when there's no other choice, and basically the concern is that this is their minig, that might justify the minig, and many poskim sanction the minig for those that have it. To leave you two interesting, important halachos to mention, a young couple that are home, so if they're lucky, both parents and in-laws live locally, and they don't go move in, they basically stay home, and they eat out. So this next Friday, is going to be Shvi Shal Pesach, going into Achrein, and let's say they have a few dishes that they use, they want to wash it l'kavod Shabbos, kavod Yomtov Achrein. The question is, if they didn't make an erev tavshilin, what's the heta for that? Because here they're washing dishes on Friday afternoon for Shabbos. Where's the erev tavshilin? So the emes is, if a couple moves into their parents, then they are included in the parents' erev tavshilin. Or else they're kind of part of it, whatever, but I'm talking about if they're home and they're not included in their parents' erev tavshilin. So the truth is they should make an erev tavshilin for their own hadlakis ne'er Shabbos. And also for dishes. If they didn't, there is a tzad to say that it's only hachana, not a malacha, and some poskim hold that hachana does not need an erev tavshilin. But it's not advisable. Best would be to make an erev tavshilin on, of course, erev Yomtiv without a bracha. If they're not actually cooking or baking, make without a bracha. And last but not least, I think it's important to mention one of the questions of dishes have become in our times very pressing. For those that live in Brooklyn, there's an issue with the water and there's the copepods, and many people have installed in their kitchen what's called an easy filter to basically strain out any potential infestation. Now, if you know, in certain areas, after a day or two, the sink is already, that easy filter is clogged. You have to take it off and clean it and replace it. So most poskim feel that taking it off and replacing it on Shabbos is an issa of moisav ala binyan. Because it's part of the binyan, part of the sink. The question is, on Yom Tiv, 2 days, and certainly 3 days, after a while, there's a trickle of water. So I saw Sefer Shulchan Yom Tiv and Siman Yotes, he says that basically, this is taka, not oichel nefesh. This is machshiri oichel nefesh. But, it's ef shemi boi joim. You can't do Erev Yom Tiv. And, this would be mutter. Ay halacha ve'ein moirin kain. So he quotes Rav Moshe in Chelik Aleph Siman Kuf Chav Beis, a novel chiddush. Why is halacha ve'ein moirin kain? Because if you could do it on Yomtov this year when it's Efsha, next year you'll do it when it's Efsha. But something that's always Efsha, there's no din of a Myron cane. A easy filth is always Efsha. After a day or two, it's always Efsha. So we could say it's taka machshir yochel nefesh, it's taka mutta I ein Myron cane. In such a case, it is Myron cane. Now, good talk to you all.
B'shem English, I would like to thank Rabbi Smith for the wonderful shir. Whatever Rabbi said, just like Klal Yisrael now, we're preparing for the Heilig Yomtov Pesach. Everybody's preparing and people trying to help all the Yidden all over the world to see that everybody should come to Zman Chereseinu with a große Simcha, which is the biggest mitzvah of Klal Yisrael, to come to this Yomtov, knowing that all the Yidden have what to eat and where to go for Yomtov. Rabbi said there's hundreds of families here that still don't have enough money for Yomtov. Kipshutai, a father, a mother, a whole mishpacha that muches of a whole year comes Pesach, they need food, they need matzahs, they need clothing. We're asking everybody to please participate in a nice way, to give a check of $100, $180, write checks to the congregation by Saharan, and there's a credit card machine on the beamer. In this chus, when you come to the stage, you'll say, Kol dich van Yosef Yechel, you know you helped many Eden for Yomtov. You'll be able to have a real simplest Yomtov, and the Eibusher should bench you with a lot of simcha v'nachas from the kinder, the eniklach, and there's chus, you will get a shmira, el shmurim, daf man doch shmira. And the schus was held on the Eden, the greatest shmira for sich. And ask everybody, please participate in the Mois Chitin campaign with the Besmedish. Checks made to the congregation by Saharan or credit card machines on the beam. With Tiskra mitzvahs. And we gaan elkaar schoen, maar als Gottes Bogle zaken is al fikir hibrum teuer mitzvahs. Shenem bal an Yakov man zitka jag dil teure viade.